11 years ago, in the spring of 2004, our commencement speaker also received her degree. Trinity Simons is a native of El Dorado, Arkansas, who came here to the University of Arkansas, turning down some significant offers from other institutions elsewhere. And the school is forever grateful for her attendance. And Trinity now returns in the spring of 2015 in her current position as director of the Mayor's Institute on City Design, following public service roles elsewhere in the United States and following the achievement of a Master of City Planning degree with a focus on city design and real estate development from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Trinity, as I've said, has served in a number of ways for our society, addressing in those ways some of our nation's most pressing urban planning and design issues. She previously directed the Enterprise Rose Architectural Fellowship, a prestigious fellowship program for emerging architects to achieve design excellence in affordable housing through work with community development corporations. She now speaks in her current role about the intersection of design and political activities at events across the country, including national conferences of the AIA, the American Planning Association, the American Society of Landscape Architects. She currently serves on the board of directors of the Association for Community Design and has previously served on the boards of the National Architectural Accrediting Board, the Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture, AIAS, that is the American Institute of Architecture Students, and the Washington, D.C. chapter of the AIA. Her design work has won numerous awards, including a Progressive Architecture Citation, a Boston Society of Architects Unbuilt Design Award, and an Outstanding Student Planning Award from the American Planning Association. We welcome back, therefore, a native of Arkansas, a graduate of our school, a graduate with ambition who is already having a measurable impact on the lives of others out in our society. Please join me in welcoming Trinity Simons as our commencement speaker today. Trinity.
Thank you, Dean McKeith. I spend a significant chunk of my life trying to get mayors to only speak for 10 or 15 minutes. So if you know mayors, it's much easier for them to talk for an hour than it is 15 minutes. So when Dean McKeith asked me to speak for 10, I thought I was getting a dose of my own medicine. But seriously, it's a tremendous honor to return to my home state, my home program, to give this address. On my last day living in Arkansas, I was actually sitting exactly where you guys are today. My U-Haul was packed, my hand-me-down couch was in a dumpster somewhere, and my fridge was clean. And though I haven't lived in Arkansas since that day, I make a habit of singing its praises and visiting as often as I can. The state has long punched above its weight in politics, economics, and increasingly in arts and architecture. When I was a student, New courses were being offered in environmental and sustainable design. This was right after LEED was launched and well before it was considered to be a leadership imperative by professionals. Design build studios were prized courses within the curriculum. We built houses for the less fortunate, handicap accessible play structures for kids with disabilities and long-term illnesses. UACDC was transitioning in leadership, going from a community design studio that did one-off planning projects for small municipalities, which is important work, to a world-renowned center that's leading in design research and scenario planning. And I'm incredibly proud of my undergraduate education, and I've ceased to be surprised when people from all over the country are familiar with the school and impressed by the quality of its work. But today I want to impart a very simple message to you, and it's a message that you may not think you need to hear, and it's a message that you may think is painfully obvious, and it's this: design matters. I'll repeat it: design matters. I built a career out of giving the process of design to people who do not have it as a tool. And I never start by telling them that design matters. Once they see it, they tell me things like, I'm going back to City Hall on Monday and we're going to totally rethink this project. That was the former mayor of Boston, the late Tom Menino. Or design is like getting a new pair of glasses when you didn't know that you needed them. It's the current mayor of Baltimore, Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake. But to have a conversation about the ways in which design matters, we first need to talk about what design is and what design isn't. And I'm willing to bet that if I asked some of your loving family that's here today to define design, they would have a very different answer than you do. And this is the crux of design maintaining relevance during a time when the world so desperately needs it. So what is design? Let's start with what it's not. Design is not a pretty drawing. Design is not taste. It's not a preference for, say, modern architecture over postmodern architecture. And design's not just for the 2% of our building stock that engages architects and designers. So what is design? Design's a way of thinking. Design's taking a problem, most often in today's society an ill-defined, nebulous problem, what we might call a wicked problem, modeling that problem, arranging it, adding other things to it, taking pieces away from it, playing with it until, aha, you've rearranged the pieces so that the solution is something better, something that changes the way that people think about the original question. We often say in our work that before design provides solutions, it helps to flush out all of the options. And this skill will be critical to solving the pressing issues of our time, those issues that need a paradigm shift to be solved. So you obviously believe that design matters, or you wouldn't be here today. But let me tell you that this skill matters, that most people don't know that it matters or why it matters. And it matters in ways beyond what you may have considered. And specifically, I have 3 specific areas. So the first is design as a process for all. I work every single day with people who only view the problems that they face through the lens of the tool that they possess to solve it. Another way of saying that is if someone has a hammer in their hand, every problem becomes a nail. But designers have the unique ability, I'm like looking for my nephew. Designers have the unique ability to show a variety of tools, or at least bring all the hammers to the table. But you can never take for granted that people value design and the design process as much as you do. I once had a professor, a very esteemed professor in a field adjacent to design, not at this institution, tell me that design is like having a Ferrari in your garage when the roof is caving in. Design is not that. And will not build the cities of tomorrow, communities of opportunity, by solving our problems with the tools that we already possess. Second part is design your career. So this is a part of the address where someone might tell you that it's okay to fail and that there's success in failure, but design students don't need to hear that. Even the quote-unquote best of you have survived failure, and probably publicly, I imagine Marlon might remember one of mine. But instead it's your responsibility to design your life and your career. Your first job probably won't be your dream job. And even if it is, there are parts of it that are dreadfully boring. But while you're young, you have more freedom to take risks. And we are, for perhaps the first time, living in a time where people pick the city where they want to live first and then find a job. So get out of your comfort zone. Sheryl Sandberg tells the story of her meticulous spreadsheet of her career goals and wishes. And she was interviewing with a young Google, and she was about to turn down the job, saying it didn't align with her long-term plan. And the Google exec said, "Don't be stupid, Sheryl, get on the rocket ship." So don't be afraid of the rocket ship. But whether you're on a rocket ship, or if you're on, where I find myself often, one of those people movers at the airport stuck behind someone who is inexplicably not walking, there are parts of your job that will be dreadfully boring. So if you leave with one thing, take this formula for designing your career, which was given to me by a mentor. Break your work into 5 parts. 3 of those are just work. It's work. It's the mundane that you can't even begin to imagine yet. And save 1 part for education. You must not lose that curiosity that propels you in the design studio. And 1 part, that last magical part that my mentor calls stretch. What are you not doing right now that your soul burns for? And what's that piece that you never feel like you have time for? What's your stretch? And for some of you, it'll be writing, public service, teaching, leadership in your firm, mentorship. Devote 1 part to it. Now, those 3 parts work are probably going to take 40 hours a week. maybe more on some weeks. But those two other parts, the education and the stretch, are the ones that'll keep a fire lit in your belly, and please feed them regularly. And finally, you have an imperative, a responsibility to make sure that everything you design, every building, every landscape, every space, contributes to the human spirit. Ask yourself, and you may need to ask yourself this often, why did you enter design? And I'm willing to bet that at some level, it was to make people's lives better, easier, and filled with beauty and delight. And design is, at its heart, a service profession. And maybe for some of you, this will play out on a big scale, building shelters for the less fortunate, people impacted by disaster, hospitals for the sick. For others, this might be a smaller but no less important scale, the sun-filled light of an office lobby, a bench where a retired person can comfortably watch. But what it all has in common is that you're always serving more than your client, and that the design of your buildings and spaces reflects how you feel about the people that you serve. And that's no small task or responsibility. So the mayor of Charleston, South Carolina, is the founder of the organization that I run. He's currently serving his last year of his 10th term, his 40th year as mayor. He's much too polite to say that he's single-handedly responsible for the revitalization of Charleston, but many people would say exactly that. And he often talks unabashedly about beauty and the role of beauty in our society. And this is a topic that many of us in design, myself included, often avoid. But he talks about how the city should be a place where the hearts of all citizens can sing. And he tells the story of Clarence, how Clarence was a fixture around town in the 1970s and 80s. And he shined shoes and he swept sidewalks for a living and rode his bike everywhere. And he suffered from seizures, and the people who worked downtown knew to keep an eye on him to make sure that he was all right. And one morning when Mayor Riley was out jogging, he saw Clarence down on a pier by the water. And later when Mayor Riley ran into him again, he asked Clarence if he goes there often. "Yeah," said Clarence, "I love watching those big ships come in and out of the harbor. It's just so beautiful." In 1990, when the city's new waterfront park officially opened, Mayor Riley had Clarence join him on the honorary platform. Mayor Riley explains that this is because the waterfront park and beautiful spaces are for the Clarences of the world. There are people in our cities and towns who only have the city, who will never see the Pacific Ocean or the beauty of Portsmouth. And if we're lazy about city building, we're giving Clarence and everyone else a less hopeful and less nourishing environment for their lives. And I have lost my last page. So the infinitely quotable John F. Kennedy Jr. once said, "I'm certain that after the dust of centuries has settled, we too will be remembered not for our victories in battle or in politics, but for our contributions to the human spirit." And graduates, it's hard to talk about this without sounding like I'm talking in platitudes, but you have a tremendous responsibility with your degree. A planner much smarter than me once said, we can spend the next 10 years doing it right, or the next 100 years fixing it. So I think we're about to adjourn to a reception where we can have a toast to doing it right. Thank you.